Hey guys, Stealth here. Today in the Submarine editions we're going to be adding an anti-torpedo system. So you can see I've done a bit of a paint job on the sub to make it look a little bit more intimidating, especially once this thing's in the water and submerged. You're going to see that it's only got this black thing protruding from the water, and that's usually not even the case. Anyway, currently lifting it out of the water and adding the counter-torpedo system. Now, the first thing that you might be thinking of with a counter-torpedo system is, oh, I'll just put on some munition warners. And with those, I can probably shoot down any incoming torpedoes with either missiles, guns, or lasers. Unfortunately, these things don't work below the water level, so we're going to have to come up with something else. And considering that the AI cannot exactly see anything underwater as far as incoming munitions go, we're going to have to go with something a bit more creative. It's not a 100% solution, but it's better than what we have, because what we have at the moment is a sub that's best option against enemy torpedoes is to run away and hope that those torpedoes run out of fuel before they hit me. The thing is, this ship currently has a speed, or top speed, I think of a maximum, let's say 10. I don't think I can do any faster than that. Let's have a look. 8 meters per second. Yeah, 820. If I'm being chased by fast torpedoes, let's say 20 meters per second, those things can keep that up for miles and miles, and I won't exactly have anywhere to go. So we need something else. That something else is what we're going to be building today in the form of the counter-torpedo system. Once again, I have to mention it is not a 100% system. It doesn't work perfectly and it will not intercept any and all torpedoes, so keep that in mind. Anyway, let's get started. As with all the previous systems, this thing is going to get its own little area down at the back of the ship. And of course that means that I will once again have to reinstall those systems, or reinstall the rudder systems later on. Now it's currently all lead. That makes this thing too heavy at the stern. So there we go. You can see the sub is still trying to launch those beacons. Currently not actually required, but they're set on a timer anyway. Okay, now go to missiles and start adding launch pads. You want to have a launch pad that's protruding 2 tiles out of your submarine. And I'm going to be, let's see, doing it like this. A couple of gantries there. We're going to be needing connectors down the middle to keep this thing hooked up, because there will also be quite a few staggered add-ons. Let's go with 2, so it releases one of these things every second. And then we're going to add a controller. We don't really need that one. Now, how do you set these things up? Pretty simple. All that you need these things to do is float at the same level of your submarine and intercept missiles, or intercept rather torpedoes. Now torpedoes cannot exactly be intercepted because a missile that usually uses the missile interceptor head, as it states here, gets the information from the missile warning cameras, which we don't have. But what it can still do is, once it has a torpedo in its range, it can still try and detonate that, and it does. So the missile interceptor is going to be the head of this, well, let's say anti-torpedo buoy or anti-torpedo mine. The other parts are going to be filled with, first of all, a regulator. You want this thing to start in the water, or to stay in the water for as long as possible. And one regulator will keep it in the water for about 4 minutes. 180 seconds additional to the standard 60 seconds. Next up, have a ballast tank. Really important. Don't adjust anything here, just have it at float depth 0 to ignore, which means that this thing is going to float at the depth at which it is ejected from the submarine. That's all that you need. And finally, you have one more slot, and you can, if you want to, set this thing to be a mine, although it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really attract to any kind of nearby vehicle anyway, it's not supposed to do that. So what I usually do is add yet another regulator. Now this means that those things, those anti-torpedo mines or anti-torpedo decoys, Well, actually no, decoy is not the right term, because they're not actually distracting the incoming torpedo. They're just trying to position themselves in their way and hoping that they get the detonation on them. The regulators times 2 means that this thing is now in the water for 7 minutes. And considering that they're only 2 block missiles, you can keep ejecting them quite often. And you can basically draw a whole trail of these things behind your sub as you're still running away from the enemy submarine and throwing torpedoes over your shoulder, trying to get the kill on the enemy sub. So, apply design to same length missiles. Now I have 6 of these protruding from the hull. Let's currently set them up on a temporary manual control. Block 5, or control system 5. Let's get to a bit of depth so I can show you what these things actually do. Current depth set to 27, let's go to 37. That'll do. And of course I cannot, actually yeah, we're gonna have to adjust that. I cannot maintain depth because I cannot maintain pitch because I don't have any engines, which means no speed. Let's chop the rest off. And, well, you know what? I'm just going to slightly adjust this. I'm going to have more. I found that more of these things equals safety. Because you simply need to be able to deliver as many of these things into the water as possible. They are your lifeline. If your torpedo, or if an enemy torpedo hits your sub, you're going to notice, and it's going to hurt like holy hell. So that's not what I want to have happen. There's another buoy that's being launched. Now let's close the sub up again. I'll worry about the paint scheme later. It's just for testing purposes at the moment. One there. We're going to need a bit more of the hull, like that. And we're going to close this thing off with metal blocks on the edges. A couple of metal beams. 1, 2, 3. I believe the compartment is yet again watertight. Now there is so little space in here that I don't really need to add a water pump or an air pump. What I do need to do is add the additional control systems or the additional propulsion systems. There we go, set it to primary. It's immediately spinning up. It's a bit annoying that you have to do this at every turn, but that's the cost of continuously making this submarine bigger. Normally, if you design this thing in one go, then you wouldn't really have this problem. Alright, we got propulsion. Sub is immediately starting to dive. The dive planes are trying to get the sub level again at a 0 pitch. There we go. Alright, now let's eject these. What they do is simply float out of the sub. And what I'm doing is creating a trail of these things behind me. Now let's say I have an enemy submarine coming at me from this angle. They fire a torpedo, the torpedo runs into some of these things, and they try and blow up the enemy torpedo. And by doing so, they are consistently trying to hinder enemy torpedo systems. Now it works even better if you turn every now and then. So that I have these things being ejected from the sub. And you can see that instead of having this neat trail of almost, let's say, a couple of trees lining a lane or lining a highway, they're now in a bit more of an erratic pattern. I would not recommend adding an ejector because you're going to fire them too far away from the sub and they won't actually be useful. And you could even go so far as to say, well, I want to fire them directly in reverse. So let's add a few more. Let's take these off. And I think we have enough room to do it. Although I might need to adjust this missile setup slightly. If I put one over there, and then a couple of gantries. 1, 2. That's the ejector system. Now, do I have room at all for the last component that I need? Yeah, I can probably throw that in there later. Okay. The next component we're going to be adding is an automated control block. Because these things are still missiles, and I don't want them to fire at all times. That's going to get quite expensive as far as resources goes. So what I want this block to do is only fire under specific circumstances. There we go. I only really need one, so let's delete that one. Now make sure you set this thing to have an effect range of about 3 to 4. Make sure that we test that later. What I want this thing to do is when there is any target below 0 meters, so that means that there's a submarine nearby, I want you to fire weapon systems. Test. Yep, they're firing. Now they're currently just dropping out of the sub. That's perfect. Normally, these things would just continue to float out of the submarine. That's good enough. Let's make sure those additional missile racks also have the same thing. And these are actually being dropped out from behind the sub. So I'm creating a screen of 6 on this side, 6 on that side, and 2 behind me for a total of 14, hopefully, torpedo decoys. Now, if you're building a submarine that's going to have additional segments, then these rear launchers won't work. You're going to have to stick with side launchers. One there, add a couple of metal blocks. I hope that this doesn't interfere with the propeller. So far, I've personally only had them on the side, so I'm not sure if this actually will work. Let's have a look. 4, 5, 6, 7. Do they fire through the propeller? Come on. They do not. Okay. So that's going to be a bit of a problem. That means that this rear system might not work in its current configuration. And I don't believe I have too much room to move them sideways. Although, if I add a connector, I can probably get away with putting a launch pad there. In that configuration. Add the gantries. Ah, crap, that's when the control block gets in the way. Okay. I have to move the control block. Like that. Gantries. And make sure they all have the same decoy system. And yeah, technically it's not a decoy, but whatever. So long as you understand what I'm going with. Metal blocks there. These can just be regular beams. Trying to keep the block count down a bit. And hopefully, this time around it won't interfere with the system. I think that we're fine like this. Gotta go back in, adjust the control block. Set the control block to a control system of 2. It's even closer now. Activate when there's a target below 0 meters. Fire the weapons. Gotta make sure I set this thing to primary. We're gonna have to, once again, add the... Come on, stealth. Add the rudder. H and K. Drop it into the water. And, oh, I didn't quite seal it off yet. Forgot a couple of blocks on this end. There we go. Alright, dive, dive. Submarine should be leveling out at 35, which I believe is the required depth. Where's my control? Here it is. Yep, 37. Alright, now it's time to test this thing out. As I mentioned before, and I'm going to mention it yet again, it is not a foolproof system. If you have a submarine that just fires so many torpedoes at you that you're going to get overwhelmed, you're screwed. Alright, let's add a regular design submarine. The P-Quad... Yeah, I think the P-Quad can do it. Yep, the submarine has detected that there is a threat nearby. Forward torpedoes are firing. They're in a throw-over-the-shoulder system. So they're going to turn around, swim around the submarine, and why is this thing on the surface? Okay, I did not bring in the right target, because this thing doesn't have any missile systems. It doesn't have any torpedoes. Thruster craft, no. I want to have a submarine. The Malice. I'm not exactly versed in the torpedo threats that these things have, but yep, it looks like they are firing torpedoes. Long-range ejectors. There's my sub. You can see I'm drawing a whole trail, but they are not quite in the way of the torpedoes yet. Continuing to drop more. And in the meanwhile, I'm keeping the same depth. That's important. Otherwise the torpedoes will just ignore all of those anti-torpedo mines. Here they come. This is a scary prospect. They should be... Yep, there we go. They're detonating. Trying to get some of the torpedoes detonated, and they are indeed blowing up. But there is just too many of them. There's just way too many torpedoes for me to be able to handle. And that's something that I haven't quite figured out what to do with. Because this thing fires, by the looks of it, something along the lines of 8 torpedoes. Let's pause that. 2... Yeah, I'd say about 8, maybe even 10 torpedoes. That's a bit much for the system to defeat. If you're fighting stray torpedoes, you can probably get away with it. But fighting this many is tough. Especially if those last couple torpedoes manage to hit your stern and knock the entire system off. So it is recommended that you not have this system in the rear. But it does work. Although this is going to be the end of my sub. That is... that's not very good. And that's the risk of torpedoes. There is one other thing that you can do against torpedoes. It's not recommended. It's not standard operating procedure. But it will work. For now, let me just fix this thing up right quick. I'm going to add a small storage and then some repair bots. Now, have you ever heard of an emergency blow in a submarine? It's if there is something threatening the sub that you suddenly have to work against and you suddenly have to leap out of the water. That's something that can save you from torpedoes, because, as usual, torpedoes won't work below surface level. So, alternatively to having the rear anti-torpedo bay, the alternative is to get the entire sub out of the water as fast as possible. And the fastest way that I've been able to do that is by using balloon deployers. Now, it's heresy. It does work, and once this sub is actually repaired, we're going to add some more balloons to the top, and once the torpedoes get close enough, I'm going to do an emergency blow, get the entire sub out of the water as fast as mechanically possible. I was going to say humanly possible, but I think mechanically possible is more applicable to this machine. Now, they really did a number on me. The damage is extensive. The repair bots are doing what they can. But with all the additions that I've been doing to this submarine, it's becoming quite the large device. Although I think that the price tag is still below 10,000 points of material. There's the ammo storage being built. Once the top deck is fine, we can start building. Screw it, I'll just add a few more repair bots. I'm going to take all of those things back off. They're just here to help with repairs. That's something that I haven't added yet to the submarine, by the way, a compartment for storage. So that's something that's so easy that I won't be making a video out of it. Just make another compartment, make sure you add a couple of, I would go with the large material storages, these things. Add those, add a fuel pump, and an air pump, and you're done. That's all that you need. Looks like the rear torpedo decoy compartment is coming back up. Here we go. Engine department's back up. Now, once again, the missiles, the paint scheme, I'm going to have to be working on a little later, but that's not the point of this video. Alright, finish off the bow, please. I think that just about covers it. We're 98%. 99. And it is slightly more expensive than I expected. It's 10,800 at this point. Alright, surface. Lift it out of the water. Let's start taking these repair drones off. As well as the material storage, I don't need that. Then, air. Hot air balloon deployer. Make sure you add quite a number of these, and again it may vary how your submarine looks at the top. Mine is pretty clean, because I haven't added a periscope, but you can have a periscope added. Alright, let's go back into the control room, and we're going to add a switch. This thing does not have to be mirrored, one switch is enough. This is basically my emergency switch. And I'm going to... whoops. Can I have this thing to a complex controller? Looks like I can't have it attached to a complex controller. That's unusual. Okay, anyway. Let's just say that we're moving. We have a torpedo warning. Or you can basically look outside your sub and you go, oh crap, I got torpedoes coming in. That's when you hit the emergency switch. Balloons get deployed. The submarine suddenly climbs for the surface as fast as possible. And it seems that the bow is quite a bit heavier. There we go. You're lifted out of the water. The torpedoes will be quite harmless. Your sub will still receive warning systems or warnings from the sonar buoy. Or at least my sub has a sonar buoy. Yours may have a radar buoy. And you can still fire missiles and torpedoes and whatever weapon systems you have. The thing is, this works when you're dealing with submarines, so long as they are in... so long as that's the only threat. If you're going to do an emergency blow next to a surface contact, so let's say that there's an enemy warship nearby, it's going to laugh at you, smile at you, and then completely eradicate you. Because you're now basically a very, very large cylinder without shields, only armored by metal, and that's it. So let's cut these things and get back into the water. This is going to cause quite a big splash. Or at least it would if those effects were actually added. And we're back in the water. Now let's make sure that this thing actually works. The submarine is a bit confused at this point. It's starting to roll a little bit, but otherwise this would usually save you. Okay, let's add another malice. Let's turn to face the malice. Ah, right, I remember how to do it with the complex controller. What you need to do is manually do it for all those systems. I believe I have Y... no, H is the rudder. I don't know. Screw it, we're just going to be using the switch. There's the decoys once again. Those are my torpedoes. And those look like the enemy torpedoes. Turn to face away from the malice. Those hostile torpedoes. Yep, that's a whole load of hostile torpedoes. Okay. In this case, emergency blow. All hot air balloons have now been deployed. Submarine is starting to climb. Let's hope I can get it out of the water before those torpedoes come any closer. And it looks like quite a few of them have been detonated by the anti-torpedo system. We're still loosening all of those things. Now this can get into quite the ammunition sink. So be advised of that. Did I get hit? Because for some reason some of these balloons are not getting deployed. They're currently set to... wait, there we go. More. Up, 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 up. Up. Good, I'm out of the water. And now all the enemy torpedoes can do nothing but just swim around in circles as they're looking for a target and basically circle harmlessly. Whereas I should have still some information from the sonar buoy. Radar buoy doesn't know anything. Nope, I don't have any targets either. So now we can no longer see each other. But at least I won't get hit by torpedoes. So, there you have it. 2 different options for defending yourself against torpedoes. I like this system. It's not foolproof. You can still get hurt. But at least it takes some of the heat off of you. And especially if you make a fast submarine, you can get away with running away and dumping these things out of your ass, basically. And hoping that you don't get hit. The large hot air balloon deployers, I don't particularly like it as an option. But the easiest way to defeat torpedoes, which are surface or subsurface targeting objects, is to simply not be in the water. It's looking ridiculous, and once again, I wouldn't advise it only as a last resort. But it is a way that you can use to save your sub from destruction. So those are the 2 systems that you can use. But maybe you have figured out some other systems, and if you have, I'd be very, very interested to hear what kind of systems you've come up with to save your submarine. For now, leave those remarks in the comments, and I might be able to do a video on your idea, your suggestion, on how you can save your submarine from impending destruction by enemy torpedoes. Because short of torpedo deployers or torpedo mines like this, I haven't really found any way to do it. So if you have, let me know in the comments, and otherwise feel free to use any of these systems that you see here. Thank you for watching. I hope the video was useful. If it was, please give it a like so I know that you want to see more of this and that this is a system that you're interested in. Otherwise, just leave me a comment down below telling me what kind of video you would like me to create, and I'll get right on that. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon for more from the depths.